All right, good afternoon. I'd like to call this Growth and Natural Resources Committee meeting to order. I am super excited for the work we are embarking on together as a city to address climate change. This has been a long time coming, and I'm grateful for staff's work and the work of so many community members to create a plan that will help Raleigh reduce our climate pollution. I want to start by reminding us all that for years we saw no action on climate change by our state and national leaders. Worse, we had actually seen national leaders who denied climate science and even saw a backsliding of the work that had been done by previous leaders. So Raleigh and other local governments around the country stood up and stepped in to fill the void. For us, this stepping up resulted in the community-wide climate action plan and a goal of reducing our climate pollution by 80% by 2050. Now we get to celebrate the fact that we have a presidential administration that is taking this issue extremely seriously and leading the way for our country and the world on climate mitigation and resilience. Some are now saying Raleigh's goal isn't strong enough, that we should change our goal to match other state and federal goals being set. However, Raleigh doesn't live in a biodome, so fixing our global climate problem is going to take all of us. I expect that with federal and state government and private sector stepping up to the plate and making changes that will impact all of us, we will more easily meet, if not exceed, our own goals. And to this point, I do not think it is wise for us to spend our time debating a new goal, which would result in more time revising the Ccap. I believe we can all agree that we don't have more time to wait, that we need to get to work now. So rather, I think we can commit to revisiting our goal after we've done some of this work. That's why it is imperative that we focus on the plan in front of us, which lays out the best policies and funding strategies, given the resources and limited authority the city of Raleigh has to impact climate and protect our residents from climate change. As we will hear in today's presentation, one of our next steps is to set targets for many of the strategies outlined in our plan, and I look forward to finding ways to track and celebrate our incremental progress toward our larger climate pollution goals. Finally, I want to remind us all that in addition to the policies we will talk about today, the biggest way that we as municipal elected officials can impact our climate is by building a city where people are walking, biking, and taking the bus, and able to get to the amenities they need by these modes of transit in 15 minutes or less. That may also be our biggest challenge as a city. It's easy to talk in platitudes about wanting to protect our environment and fight climate change, but it's really difficult to weigh the trade-offs and make the decisions when it comes to the day-to-day decisions we are responsible for making. So before we start, I want to challenge each of my GNR committee members to always think about the big picture when it comes to protecting our environment and climate change, today and all of the time. As corny as this may sound, our children and grandchildren aren't worried about building heights and increased traffic today or even in a couple of years. As my own children have expressed to me, they are concerned about the future of our planet and their ability to live in it at all. So now we will hear from staff on our Ccap priorities. We'll then open it up for public comment, if there are any. I'm not sure that we actually have anybody signed up to speak to this item, and then hold a discussion at the table. We will then have an intro to our second item on today's agenda, Urban Ag, which we will hold in committee for further discussion in May. And I believe we have 2 folks who are signed up to speak to that. With that, Mr. Green, I believe we're ready to get to work.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm delighted to be with the committee today. Usually Tansy Hayward staffs this committee, and she had a conflict. So I'm delighted to introduce Megan Anderson, who is manager of our sustainability program. Megan is going to lead the discussion on both of these items. Looking forward to feedback from the committee and being able to talk about the next steps as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Megan, and I'm happy to assist and answer any questions that you may have.
Jim, and thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Stewart. I'm going to share my slide deck now, and we can get started. Can I get a thumbs up if anybody sees that? All right, thank you, Jim. All right, so I'm here today, as Mayor Pro Tem Stewart mentioned, we did bring the final Community Climate Action Plan to City Council in March, and they officially adopted that and asked us to come back to talk about the prioritization of our actions at that time. And so today we're here to do both. If you excuse me, I've got my urban agriculture update information. We'll slide through first and go right to the Ccap and then come back to that as a second item today. All right, so with that, we'll jump right into the So just to get started, I wanted to share something fun with you. When we did share with the community that we put out the plan, it was a pretty great response from the community. It was actually the largest response we've gotten for anything we've posted for the city of Raleigh on Instagram. So just wanted to share with everybody that there's a lot of excitement out there and a lot of folks paying attention to the Ccap plan. So thank you to everybody in the community for all your excitement, and we're going to continue together. All right, so as we get started, here is the agenda for the day. We'll introduce the GNR Strategic Plan Team Initiative 4.1. We'll talk about the process and contributions of the team to put together the prioritization of the Ccap actions. We'll then dive into the prioritization of the actions, and then we'll talk about the funding strategies and initiatives and policy opportunities, and provide a few Ccap updates, and then ask City Council to share any questions or feedback they have for us. So here you can see the GNR 4.1 team in one of our many facilitated sessions that we've been doing over time. I wanted to give a quick shout out and thank you to this GNR 4.1 team. They really had to jump right into this, new to this topic, and quickly get up to speed and jump right into the actions. So we have departmental representation from sustainability, budget, Raleigh Water, engineering services, and housing and neighborhoods. All staff in the sustainability office also served as technical support and resource for this, and we added on the resilience and equity work as a resource for council through this prioritization process. I also wanted to give a shout out to the budget and strategic plan team. Stephanie Olson and Matt McKirhan were a huge help to us in aligning with the strategic plan, as well as Matt facilitating all the sessions with us. Stephanie's actually here listening in today and available if there's questions around the strategic plan as it launches, and there's a lot of alignment with Ccap as well. And I also wanted to give a big thank you to the GNR core team that TNZ actually leads. They also helped us with the guidance on the prioritization process. And as a reminder, here is the initiative 4.1, identify the priorities and resources necessary for implementation of community-wide climate action plan actions. So that is exactly what we're here today to do. All right, so just a quick background. We worked with the strategic plan team in the budget and the GNR core team and the initiative team to identify the prioritization criteria and the process we would go through. Then we held 3 facilitated meetings and also conducted a few surveys to get through all of the actions. There were almost 90 different Ccap actions that the city could take that we looked at, and we evaluated all of them in total in this spreadsheet. So we then created the prioritization spreadsheet for greenhouse gases and resource impacts. And after the spreadsheet was made, the sustainability office then applied resilience guidance from Ccap, as well as connected the equity impact matrix as a resource for council. So here you can see the 2 main criteria we used for prioritization: resources to implement and impact on greenhouse gas emissions. Within the resources to implement, we broke that into separate questions to rank into actions: staff time, which is asking, are there sufficient existing staff to implement this action? Monetary, are there existing funds to implement this action? Capacity, is there capacity within the organization to lift up this action right now? This could include potential policy needs, organizational staff capacity already dedicated to this work, or other considerations. And if you remember the prioritization exercise that Stephanie Olson shared with the City Council that was done for the strategic plan initiatives, we used a similar process with the GNR team to prioritize based on these 2 criteria of greenhouse gas reduction and resources. So here in your packet, you'll find a prioritization spreadsheet. After all the exercises with the GNR 4.1 team were completed and all the actions were combined and categorized, they were then transferred over to a spreadsheet for council to use. The handout provides a summary of how the spreadsheet is organized, and generally, the first column of the spreadsheet contains the Ccap categories of greenhouse gas emissions, which include the buildings and energy that are in blue, transportation and land use are in white, and resilience and cross-cutting are in green. The second column is the city action. We had identified 87 individual city actions related to Ccap strategy areas. The third column is implementation resources that will be required for this action. Those are the three shared earlier with time, organizational capacity, and monetary. And some had a split, and they have two that were a top need. The fourth column is the resource requirement, whether the resource needs are a top, high, middle, or lower. And the fifth column is a prioritization rank. The lower the number, the more desirable the action in terms of greenhouse gas reduction and need for resources. The sixth column applies the Ccap resilience considerations, and now talk just briefly about the resilience and equity that we included as well. So for the prioritization exercise was done with greenhouse gas in mind. However, we know that we also have the objectives of resilience and equity as part of our plan. And so as we think about implementation, we wanted to give council those resources as well to think about as they're looking at this list. So after the prioritization actions occurred, the resilience considerations were included in the Ccap as a reference. The agenda packet provides more detail on this, and there's information related to resilience and equity in the Ccap actions as well in chapter 2 and 3 and 5 through 7 of the Ccap for more information. Broadly on the spreadsheet in column 6, you'll find a note next to some of the actions, and the analysis shows the type of impact on resilience, including those actions that reduce exposure, reduce sensitivity, and increase adaptive capacity. So as mentioned, resilience and equity should be considered as we are implementing. And so with that in mind, we conducted the equity impact matrix as part of Ccap. We adapted that analysis to tie it into the prioritization exercise as a resource for council. In the packet, you'll find a guide on how to connect the Ccap actions prioritized in the spreadsheet with the equity considerations. You can also find further information in chapter 2 and 5 through 7 through the Ccap document for more information. An area you won't see as part of the prioritization exercise is equity, and we've taken care of that. And within that, I wanted to mention that we've got this was done through environmental impacts, economic impacts, and public health impacts as well when we're thinking about the equity concerns related to the project. All right, so now I'm going to jump into potential funding strategies. So departments led by Stormwater had already collaborated to create this Green Raleigh review. This helps support the use of and growth of green stormwater infrastructure in Raleigh. As this was developed, staff talked about an opportunity to include other sustainability related measures like energy efficiency, and staff are going to continue to evaluate the Green Raleigh review program and figure out if this is something we'd like to continue to explore and build on as another opportunity to model other Ccap actions around the work that Stormwater is doing. Next, we're currently working to convert the Sustainability Fund to an updated Climate Action Fund to support the implementation of Ccap. The fund will be split into two. One fund is to focus on city climate actions, and the other focusing on community action. These will provide opportunities for both departments and the community actors to apply for potential funding assistance to implement climate action. They'll allow for the Sustainability Office to streamline and create a transparent process and plan for potential climate projects where potential projects can be vetted to align with high impact and other community and city priorities. The Community Climate Fund will start with about $400,000, and the City Fund will have about $310,000 after we have a current project in the hopper that we'll be spending down funds in the next couple of years. The Climate Action Fund does not have current sources for ongoing funding, and we're hoping to use this process over the next couple of years to pilot the usefulness of using these funds to engage in climate action, and we'll share updates with council on how this process is going over time. As council's heard, we've also partnered with economic development to tie climate action to the BUG grants. We're continuing to explore how we can expand this model and offerings as we work to build the Community Climate Action Fund. We're currently working with the City Attorney's Office and other partners on how we can spend these funds on a community climate action related projects. Lastly, we continue to pay close attention to the potential funding coming from the federal government and other grants. With the Build Back Better plans, jobs plans, and others, I know all the departments in finance are paying close attention to see how the city can take advantage of funding to support our city goals, including climate action. In addition, as we roll out the City Climate Fund and we continue to work with departments to learn about their potential needs and ideas related to climate action, this will give us the opportunity to connect those departments to other funding sources as we move forward. And so here I wanted to share some successful and ongoing funding initiatives. We're currently managing 2 grants out of our office. Both of these have recently been shared in detail to council in updates and press releases, so I won't go into a lot of detail here. But the Urban Heat Mapping Grant is a partnership with several external partners across Raleigh and Durham and the County of Durham. We're also working with the GNR Strategic Plan team as they will utilize the data that comes out of this grant process to identify mitigation activities for the city related to heat and vulnerable populations. The Resilient Cities Grant is through the National League of Cities, and we're partnering with Partners for Environmental Justice to lift up the Watershed Learning Network program. They just finished their first cohort, and we in Stormwater staff are working with them on planning their second cohort. We'll use the learnings from this grant to help the city think about how we continue to work in other parts of Raleigh and working with the local community on stormwater issues and empowering them to get involved in potential solutions. We also continue to look for and apply for transportation electrification related grants. We've successfully put in EV infrastructure and we're awarded about almost $400,000 for an electric bus that Parks and Rec will use in their community programs. Transportation and Transit is also getting closer to receiving our first electric buses, and you'll be hearing about that in the coming months as well. And lastly, we're continuing to evaluate other financing options and having discussions with departments on potential shovel-ready project ideas. As we roll out the new strategic plan, we've been working closely with the teams across all the KFAs to share information related to Ccap and also ready them to pay attention to potential grants or funding that may relate to their initiative team's work. We also continue to collaborate with the North Carolina Cities Initiative and our Urban and Sustainability Directors Networks, who keep us posted on general updates related to federal and North Carolina potential opportunities. So now I'm going to jump into some policy opportunities for council and staff to continue to evaluate what policy levers we might be available to as we move this work forward. Relating to buildings and energy, staff could evaluate our current and new policy options to align with the Ccap. These might include reviewing the current LEED Silver policy for potential enhanced standards, or for example, decreasing the current 10,000 square foot minimum, potentially creating a process to conduct renewable energy assessments of city-owned structures. When the city is initiating or playing a role in a community project, what requirements or other incentives could the city use that would promote climate actions like buildings to a higher level, higher energy efficiency level than the minimum code? And staff can also further explore aligning standards for energy efficiency for city buildings and building towards, for example, net zero ready buildings. So that in the future, if upgrades were possible, the buildings would be more easily retrofitted. If council was interested in these types of measures, staff could work with departments and through the strategic plan teams that are forming work plans to come back to council with options. Here are some other policy opportunities related to transportation and land use. As examples, evaluating EV capable, EV ready, and EV installed options for new developments where the conduit and necessary electrical hookups would be put in place so the building would be ready as the transition to electric occurs. Staff are already working on evaluating options for encouraging alternative transportation and vehicle miles traveled reductions in new development. And staff could also evaluate low emission transportation options to further incentivize and support EV transition. Lastly, council could consider authorizing staff to advocate for policies and decisions in the General Assembly and Utilities Commission that would further Ccap goals. A recent process where the city supported the integrated resource plan for Duke Energy and the Utilities Commission is one example of this. I also wanted to share just a couple examples of operational policy development. Some examples include vehicle equipment replacement cycles to prioritize the transition to electric, including equipment and vehicles. evaluating parking requirements for city facilities to encourage our employees to use alternative transportation options, and continuing to enhance bike and pedestrian projects as connectors for transportation systems and other ways to get people out of their cars. So as we wrap up, I wanted to share a few more Ccap project updates. Our first webinar on Earth Day was a very big success. I know some of you were there. I know Mayor Pro Tem Stewart sent us some messages. Thank you for that. We had over 100 attendees and received a lot of community feedback. We continue to work on our communications planning to focus our outreach on high impact partners and projects. And as mentioned, we're collaborating and sharing information across the new strategic plan teams that aligns with our work in the Ccap. And very soon we'll be launching the Sustainable Business Toolkit, so stay tuned for more information on that. We also have our climate action website live, and it will continue to update over time with new information and activities. We're launching our social media campaign, and as mentioned, it's been going well, and we've been getting a lot of activity and working really closely with our departments who also have communications folks to put information out through departmental work as well. Our next webinar will be on May 11th, and we'll be in partnership with several departments and community partners in celebration of Building Safety Month. And our Raleigh youth climate interns are hard at work on their departmental projects, and we'll be sharing information with council on the work they're doing. And also we're planning to have a second cohort later on. And the city continues to roll out volunteer and action opportunities, including supporting the Lights Out in Raleigh, which is going on right now for a bird migration, turning out your lights to support birds safely migrating, opportunities to participate in our heat mapping campaign, the rescheduled litter cleanup that got rained out over Earth Weekend, and a lot of other departmental volunteer opportunities. And then quickly, I'll just share now that the team jumped right into that prioritization process. It set a great foundation for the rest of the work that team is going to start doing. And here is a couple examples of what that might look like. And then related to linking the work through the strategic plan, data and updates over time, future policy and programs, and funding alignment with Ccap. So now I would like to just see if anybody has any questions or feedback, and I can stop sharing now just to see what council would like to talk about.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. And yeah, let's do council questions on the presentation, please. Councilmember Fort, did you have your hand up? No, okay. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Anderson? Councilmember Knight.
Thank you. Thank you. Lost y'all. Can you see me? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman Stewart. I want to thank you for your words at the beginning of this meeting, and I appreciate those. I think it is a bit of a call to action, and I do believe and support you in this, that we need to be focused on the work at hand before us. I think we are in some ways, this may sound strange, but in a sweet spot here that, as you say, we have an executive branch at the federal level and the state level that are not only supportive, but willing to lead on climate action. And so that helps us be able to do our jobs at the local level. So I think that's very important. And also there is funding that's coming available for projects and programs beyond what the city itself can do. So I think that's incredible and great. And also I think at the end of the day, as you said, we have to act. There's no real option here. We've got to move forward, and we've got to move forward quickly. And so I look forward to doing that with the city staff, and also most importantly the residents and citizens of the city of Raleigh. So I'm excited about that. A few things I think that stand out. I think Ms. Anderson, alignment across the city government, city staff, in terms of we're all working on making sure that climate action is aspects and components of all the work that's being done, and I think that comes out in your matrix in a lot of ways. I think also, and you may have talked about this a little bit at some point, about a scoreboard or scorecard to keep us up on how we're doing on the individual items as we move forward. I think is important. So I just look forward to getting started, letting the experts, the staff lead us through this. I think one aspect I would like to see us thinking about as we move forward is moving some of those encouraging to requiring. And I think that's something we get, those are big decisions and tough decisions, like in green infrastructure, low impact development. How do we really start requiring those practices as we move forward? I think we're going to have to do that and need to do that. And I think the citizens and residents of the city are ready to do that and help with that aspect of it. So thanks again. I look forward to working with the staff and the citizens of Raleigh on this.
Thank you, Councilmember Knight. Councilmember Fort, Councilmember Cox, any thoughts at this point?
I don't have anything right now.
Okay. Ms. Anderson, I would like to ask, you asked us if we were interested in exploring any of these policy opportunities, and then you listed a few, but I imagine there's probably more floating out there as well. And so I want to ask you, is this something we can say, go on, explore and bring it back to us, or is this something we need to see maybe beyond a few bullet points in a manager's update or otherwise that we can then respond to?
I think we can probably take that back to staff, and there might be a little bit of both depending on what it is. But I imagine there's some that will fit nicely with the new strategic plan teams, and others that might go to a department, and others that might be closer or further away from being ready. So if that would be okay with you, we can take it and kind of look at that list. And you're talking about what was in the slides?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So next step, we can take it and come back to you with options.
I think that'd be great. And I think if there's some low-hanging fruit policy items that we could go ahead and get moving on, the sooner you can bring those back while you work on some mid and longer term ones, that would be great. I think we're ready to roll on these short-term ones.
That gives us good direction to kind of talk to departments about that.
Great. Councilmember Cox?
If staff's going to go off and look at policies, I've encouraged them to look at tree policies as something to focus on. And in particular, not just Councilmember Stewart's idea of a citywide tree conservation ordinance, but also the ideas that the city attorney had put forward of tree conservation overlay districts that we could adopt. And any other ideas for preserving trees or encouraging planting of trees. Thank you.
Councilmember Knight, did you have your hand up?
Councilor Cox got more specific, and I'll go back to my big desire is scaling up the use of alternative energy. I think energy use is a big part of, as we all know, global warming, and moving to clean alternative energy at a scaled up level, I think is something that at a city level we can help with and move in. And there are some precedent out there of other cities doing this. So I hope we take that seriously and look into programs of where we can scale up the use of alternative energy for our citizens. Thank you.
Great, thank you both. I think the one thing I want to underline, Ms. Anderson, and you pointed this out, is having shovel-ready projects that would help with our climate change plan, directly addressing any of these items for if and when any funds come down from federal. We know they'll come, we just don't know in what form. So having some shovel-ready projects would be 2 thumbs up. Any other comments or questions from council members? Okay, I want to confirm with Mr. Chavis. I don't believe we have anybody signed up to speak. on this item. I think we have 2 people signed up to speak on urban ag, but I just want to confirm that.
Yes, the individuals who are speakers are all for urban ag. We did have a new person who joined, Scott Payne. Scott, speaking, which topic did you want to speak on?
No, I'm a staff member here.
Staff member. Well, I've got to learn those things. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Stewart, before we leave this item, I just wanted to recognize Megan and her team. Just a tremendous amount of work. Every time I hear Megan talk about this very important topic, I hear the passion, I hear the commitment, and that's throughout her team. And so I appreciate her leadership, and I appreciate, too, the entire team and the work they're doing. To Councilmember Knight's point, they're a small but mighty group, but they see how important it is to look organizationally. And I heard her several times in this presentation talking about those partnerships with other departments and making sure that all departments are focused on the environment and focused on ways to improve our climate. So just wanted to jump in and recognize Megan and her team and thank them for all their hard work.
Councilmember Knight.
Yeah, and I appreciate that too. And I know Councilor Stewart and other councilors have been working hard on this before some of us got here, and so has the staff. And I really appreciate all the work that y'all have put into this. And I really appreciated the webinar that you conducted, I guess last week. And I think that is a great form and way of communication and communicating with the greater, our greater citizens out there. So I think you have one coming up, another one coming up. So I think keep that up. That's a great way of doing it. And just, it shows with, you said, the largest response that we've gotten from in the city is on climate through Instagram. So that shows you that there's a hunger out there and a desire from the city to get to work on this. So thanks again for all y'all's work up to now.
Thank you all for all the support from leadership. We need it and we appreciate it.
Awesome. This is great stuff, Ms. Anderson. I think we are ready for our second agenda item then, urban ag. Oh, yes, Mr. Clerk.
Just a clarification, Madam Pro Tem, are we holding the item in committee?
No, I think it's safe to vote it out unless any council member objects. Okay, so I'll make a motion that we vote this item out with no action, but I believe staff has direction. Seconded by Councilmember Cox. All in favor? And that was unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Clerk, for always keeping us in line. All right, Ms. Anderson.
Sure, yep. I'm going to bring back up the presentation quickly here. Pardon me for 1 second. Okay. So, just really quickly wanted to talk about this item. So as council knows, on April 6th, there were several folks that came to the council meeting to talk about urban agriculture and food policy. And so just really quickly wanted to update you on what we heard there. There was an acknowledgement and encouragement of urban ag and equitable food policy as a priority for the city. Community engagement around urban agriculture and the creation of a comprehensive Raleigh food policy, and adjusting the UDO to remove barriers to community gardens and urban agriculture. So just wanted to provide a little bit of background information, and you'll see that in your handout that you had in your packet as well, just a little bit of background. So at the May GNR Council Committee meeting, staff will return to do a deeper dive into these topics. But as a summary, here are the policy alignment topics that we'll be talking about more. Our work as a stakeholder and partner on the Wake County Food Security Plan, which will probably be going through an update sometime soon. We're waiting to hear back from Wake County on that. And the work of this past strategic plan on urban agriculture and the 2 new teams in GNR and Safe, Vibrant, Healthy to address this topic. So GNR 1.3 will address the use and potential barriers and opportunities of urban agriculture and community gardens on private land. And Safe, Vibrant, Healthy Communities 4.3 will address the use and potential barriers and opportunities for urban agriculture and community gardens on public land. In our resilience and cross-cutting objective area for Ccap, this is also included as an action. The many benefits of urban agriculture for the community and resilience and climate work include the preservation of green space, community gardens and food security, pollinator habitat, environmental benefits for heat and flooding, and many more. So finally, there's also alignment with our comprehensive plan that has specific guidance related to community gardens and urban agriculture. And again, I mentioned this topic will be addressed more in detail in May. We'll bring our strategic plan initiative teams and the leads to help present this topic. You heard Scott Payne a minute ago, he'll be one of those leads, and then Don Belkin, planning and development. This was just a quick overview to provide some context, and then I'll take any questions if council has any before we move on.
Great, thank you. Any questions from council members? This is really just kind of an introduction to this item. We wanted to make sure we heard a little bit about it before our May meeting. With that, then I will ask that we hear from our two folks who are signed up to speak. Mr. Chavis, would you like to introduce them? And they
Yes.
have 3 minutes.
Yes, this first speaker is Jen Truman. Jen, you have 3 minutes, please. Thank you.
Hi, y'all. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Awesome. It's hard to do this without looking at my own video. I really appreciate you guys taking this up in committee. I've got a long love for urban ag here in Raleigh, and speaking up for community gardens and small businesses that work in the ag sector. One thing I want to make sure that we do is that we address this with the overarching comprehensive plan that we've asked for, but as far as like a policy that could be enacted and worked over time, but that we also make sure that we look at really how the UDO aligns with those overall policies. Because I think that right now we do have some good policy statements that say that we support urban ag, but the reality of actually taking it to permit and getting it through development services, as someone who's done or tried to do that for multiple nonprofits and businesses, is not always aligned with those policies. So we kind of want to make sure that we look at this from both sides, particularly if GNR is looking at it on private land. How you actually get it permitted is the fun and interesting part of this. And I'll go ahead and yield the rest of my time and just thank y'all again for looking at this in detail.
Great, thank you, Ms. Truman.
Okay. Our next speaker will be Tammy Purdue. Tammy, you have 3 minutes, please.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm in a Food Lion parking lot, so this is amazing what technology can do. I just wanted to say thank you, as Jen expressed earlier, for your support of and this new committee assignment for our issue of urban agriculture. I am the manager of the Well-Fed Garden, Community Garden, and I'm the owner of Sweet Peas Urban Gardens. And I have been excited to see that our city is turning an ear to this issue. I want to say that also that one of the challenges I have for everybody before the next meeting is if you could take a gander at Kiss the Ground, which is the intersection of agriculture and climate change. So it's pertinent to what we're going to be delving into more in May. But I would like you to have seen that movie so you can see our perspective from the agriculture side about how we can help with climate change. And I will yield my time.
Great, thank you, Ms. Purdue.
Those are the speakers, Ms. Purdue.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chavis. All right, council members have anything else then on this item? Councilmember Fort.
Yes, I want to thank the staff and the speakers that came on today to give us their presentations and their comments. And one of the things I like to say is I think this issue is very important. urban agriculture contributes a lot to our community, and in one place that may not necessarily be very obvious to folks is food deserts. We've got a lot of areas in Raleigh where folks don't have access to healthy food and an opportunity to get it at a lower cost. And so certainly I think the more we can expand participation in urban agriculture throughout the city, I think in a lot of areas that will certainly help some of our communities have access to higher quality and nutritious food at a good cost and a good price. And so I certainly look forward to working on this issue and moving it forward.
Wonderful point. Councilmember Cox.
Yes, I was wondering, like urban agriculture on private property, what are the barriers that are preventing that? Will we be getting a report before the May meeting so that we can have an opportunity to understand what those barriers are before we go into the meeting?
Pretend, if you don't mind, I can respond. So yeah, I think that that's definitely possible to put together at least a high level view of what those are generally before the meeting, so you have time to kind of prepare and look at that beforehand. So I can take that back to the groups to let them know.
Okay, thank you.
Great. And Ms. Anderson, do you think you need any other kind of further direction on this topic before our May meeting, or do you feel like you've got what you need?
I think if you saw our bullet points of kind of with the topics we were going to cover, if that sounds in line with everything you shared, then we're probably in good shape to move that forward. Knowing that we have two teams that are focusing on the internal and external, we try to cover both sides.
Great. Well, then thank you to our speakers for hanging with us and joining us today. And council members, anything further? Any further comments or questions? All right, anything further from staff? Mr. Clerk, we will hold this item in committee for May.
Mayor Pro Tem, I was just going to compliment the efficiency of this committee. Earlier this afternoon, I think we had an hour and a half EDI committee, which I staffed as well. So just wanted to compliment the efficiency of this group.
Thank you, Mr. Green. I like to keep meetings under an hour, and I think Ms. Anderson has learned that. So I greatly appreciate all of staff's work to get to this point. This is awesome. All right, y'all. Well, then we will, adjourn the meeting. Thank you. Bye.